Shalom everybody, Shavua Tov. We are continuing with where we left off in Likutey Halakhot, section Orach Chaim, the laws of Birkat Hoda'ah, the blessings of giving thanks, discourse number 6. Again, based on Likutey Moharan lesson 24, which speaks about the power of joy, the power of doing mitzvot with joy and where it leads to. And we're now at the part to where it leads to. We're now still in the middle, towards the end of paragraph 24, this long paragraph, where Moshe opens up piece by piece, dissecting the dream of Jacob's ladder in Parshat Vayetze. This coming section we're going to do today is very difficult. I'm saying already beforehand, it is difficult. And it's mainly because Rav Nosson is introducing a new stage, a new level, which Rabbi Nachman doesn't explicitly mention in the lesson. Rav Nosson works very hard to show what Rabbi Nachman is saying, how it can be found in various parts of the Torah, etc. And so he's adding now a factor which Rabbi Nachman doesn't openly mention in the Likutey Moharan. Rav Nosson is showing that it's actually there, and he's going to show us, and we're going to work very hard, B'ezrat Hashem, to show the connection to what Rav Nosson is connecting to what Rabbi Nachman says in the Likutey Moharan. Before we go on, if these classes are really enlightening you, please share them on your status and whatever else you can to get Rabbi Nachman's light and Rav Nosson's shaping Rabbi Nachman's light out to the world in order to help people to come back to Hashem. Fine. So just to recap, as you recall, Parshat Vayetze, Jacob has the dream of the ladder, and we went into all the details. We're holding at the point where Yaakov wakes up. Okay, these are the two verses from the Parshat Vayetze, chapter 28, verses 16 and 17. So I'm just going to read over. Vayikatz Yaakov mishenato vayomer, and Yaakov woke up from his sleep and he said the following: Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, behold, there is Hashem in this place. And Rav Nosson, as explained, if you remember, makom is referring to the Keter, this high level called the Keter that we've spoken so many times. It's called the makom. Rabbi Nachman says explicitly in the lesson, and it's also based on the Kabbalah, of course, that the place of the world is called the Keter, the gateway to Hashem. Hashem, he's called Mekomo Shel Olam. He's the place of the world. Ve'ein ha'olam mekomo. The world is not his place. In other words, Hashem is the world is found within Hashem. It's not like, oh, here's the world and Hashem can be found also in the world. Chas v'shalom. No. Hashem is the place and the world is within Hashem. Okay? So Yaakov said, wow, behold, I see, I see there's an existence, a positive yeshut of Hashem being in this place. I'm seeing the awareness. I've reached this perception. And how? This Rav Nosson explains the next part of the verse. V'anochi lo yadati. Because I didn't know, that's how I came to know that behold, Hashem is to be found here. And now this verse number 17. Vayira vayomar, and Yaakov was filled with fear. Vayira, it's with two yuds even, like it's a strong fear. Vayira, Rav Nosson is going to explain this is the upper fear. This is what's called the fear of punishment, which is a lower fear, and it is the fear of called yirat hakavod, the fear of Hashem's glory. You just overcome with awe because of the greatness of Hashem being made aware to you. So it's called yirat ila'ah, upper fear, awe. Vayira vayomar. So Yaakov was filled with fear, trepidation, and he said the following: Ma nora hamakom hazeh. How fearsome, awesome is this place, which on the simple meaning is referring to the place where he slept, which is the place of the Holy Temple, the place of the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. In our context, we're going to see Makom again is referring to the Keter, which also, by the way, was made revealed at the place of the Holy of Holies in the temple in Yerushalayim. So he's saying how full of fear, how fearsome is this place. Ein ze ki im Beit Elokim. This is none other than the house of the Lord, the Beit Elokim, which is going to be eventually the house of the Beit HaMikdash. V'zeh sha'ar hashamayim, and this is the gateway to heaven. Okay, this is the verse. This is happening when Yaakov Avinu is waking up from the dream. Rav Nosson wants to show us, what is this fear? What is this fear? And it says twice. First, the verse says, and Yaakov was filled with fear, and then he said himself, how fearsome, how full of fear, man nora makom hazeh, is this place. It's like, the verse could have just said, Vayomar, and he said, man nora makom hazeh, and I got the message. But the Torah wants to reiterate that he was filled with fear, and then he himself made this statement that this place is filled with fear. We're going to need to see why this redundancy twice, because of the two verses Rav Nosson is going to bring. We're going to see now the difference between them. Again, we have to listen very carefully to this class, because there's many minute details, but the point will get through Bezrat Hashem. So here goes. Rav Nosson says like this: Vayira Vayomar ma nora hamakom hazeh. So like we said, and Yaakov was filled with fear. Two yuds, yira. Like he was really overwhelmed with fear. And he said the following: Ma nora makom hazeh. How fearful, how awesome, okay? How full of trepidation is this place. And again, Rav Nosson's following with the line that makom, because Yaakov could have used many words. He used the place. He could have said this holy place, site of the future temple, because he knew that that's what the future temple would be. Because like the Rashi says, that Avraham davened there, he called it a mountain. Yitzchak davened there, he called it a field. And Yaakov knew about it. He knew about this place. But he chose the word makom. Makom, by the way, is gematria yud kevavke when hit, haka'ah. There's a gematria called haka'ah, which means we take each letter of Hashem's ineffable name, yud kevavke, and we multiply each letter by itself. So yud is 10, so it'll be 10 times 10. Hey is 5, so 5 times 5, that's 25. 10 times 10 is 100. 5 times 5, 25. Vav, 6 times 6, 36. And then the last hey, 5 times 5. The multiplication is like hitting. Because when there's a smash, it becomes like now just added this side and that side. When there's a smash, so it becomes multiplied because it becomes intermingled. If there's a few ABC, becomes, even in this lesson, Rabbi Nachman points out that the mind is made up of Chokhmah, Bina, Da'at. And when they hit what's called the Keter in life, they become multiplied, they become intertwined, intermingled, and that causes multiplication of the whole unit. So it's 3 times T. So in Yud Kevavke, the Yud hits itself. Yud has 10 components. 10. Yud is 10. So the letter Yud, with its 10 components, when hitting, it's called the Haka'ah, becomes multiplied. Okay? When you add that up, when you add 100, 25, 36, 25, you get Gematria Makom, 186. Because the way to perceive the Makom, which is the Keter, it's through Haka'ah, we're going to see. It's through being bounced back. Okay, we'll go into this. Kisham b'bchinat pegiat haredifa b'amakev, because there, which is the definition of what's called the Keter, which we explained already many times in the past classes, you can listen to them. There, in this concept that every Jew goes through in life, and it's expressed especially in Yaakov Avinu, of the Pgi'ah, which means the bouncing, the bumping into of the Radifa, which is the person's mind running to advance, running to pursue, running to perceive Hashem. Okay? So the mind is running, right? So it's running, but then it hits the Keter, the wall of the Keter, doesn't smash and destroy it, but like a rubber wall, it goes in, but you can't go that far, no, and then bounces it back. It's called the me'akev, okay? So at this point of the meeting of the person's mind in the me'akev, what's happening, by the way, when a person is on a roll? This happens to everybody in life. When you're on a roll, the things are just pushing you forward. This is especially in spirituality, but even in mundanity. That when you feel that you're going and advancing and you want to go further, you see more light, you want to advance, okay? So what happens psychologically at that point when you hit a wall that's going to push you back, that's what Rav Nosson's focusing on. that point of the meeting of your mind in running forward and bumping to the Ma'akev, Shebechinat vayifga b'makom, okay? This is the idea of vayifga b'makom. If you remember, that's how Parshat Vayetzes started. It started that Yaakov went back, right? He went to Haran, and then he went back to Israel, back to Yerushalayim. And the wording, remember, we said this many, many times already. Vayifga b'makom. And Yaakov was pogea. He bumped into the Keter, the makom, which it translates as the meeting point of the running of the mind and the wall that bounces, this rubber wall bouncing him back, the wall of the Keter, as mentioned above, right? Rav Nosson throws in something new. Sham ikar hayira ila'a. When a person experiences that moment of the meeting point of the running and the wall, because it's like an accomplishment. You've reached something. The wall is now stopping you from going further. So when that happens, at that point, you've come to a level of awareness. Something is stopping you to go forward. At that point, even before being pushed back, this is the essence of what's called a fear of awe and trepidation. There's fear, oh, I'm going to get punished. I don't do bad. I don't desecrate Shabbat Chas Shalom, because I know, oy vavoy, that's fear of punishment. It's a lower level. There's a higher level called Yir'a Ila'a, the upper fear. We're just overwhelmed by the greatness of God that you're experiencing. The greatness of the light is intense, so it's overcoming you. That's called Yir'a Ila'a. So Rav Nosson says this is connected to what it says by Moshe Rabbeinu. Bechina, excuse me, we have the music in the background. People are getting ready for Purim already, thank God. Okay, passed. Bechinat, like it says in Shmot, chapter 3, verse 6, when Moshe Rabbeinu, just to recap the story, Moshe Rabbeinu fled Egypt. He was now by Midian. He was now by Yitro, his father-in-law. He married Tzipporah. He was tending Yitro's sheep, okay, that he was living by him. And he's tending his flock into the desert where it was no man's land, so that the sheep could eat grass that doesn't belong to anybody. And while there, Moshe Rabbeinu sees the burning bush on the future Mount Sinai desert. He sees the sneh. He goes up to the mountain. Hashem says to him, take off your shoes. Shal na'alecha, okay? So the Midrash says he didn't know, he didn't recognize the voice at first. He thought it was his father Amram calling him. He couldn't understand, my father's here? The Midrash says this. And afterwards he saw that it was Hashem. That's why the verse reads, here look at the verse. The full verse reads like this. He didn't know who it was. He thought it was his father calling him, the voice that he heard, telling him to take off the shoe. That he saw the burning bush is one thing. That's why he said, Asurana ve'ereh, I'm going to go and see this thing. It fits in so amazing in our lesson, by the way, that Moshe Rabbeinu was seeing something which he could not comprehend, and yet he wanted to pursue it. So he went up the mountain to see up close the burning bush, which is two opposites. It's a fire, and a bush is not being consumed. It's two opposites. What's going on? I can't fathom it. It's like a level of understanding which is above a person's level. Okay, so he went to see that. And Hashem said to him the following, he said, take off the shoes. And then the next verse says like this. Verse 6, Vayomer, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, Anochi Elokei Avicha, I am not your father, Amram. I am the God of your father. I am the Lord of your father. I'm also the Lord of Avraham, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, the Lord of Yitzchak, and the Lord of Yaakov. As soon as he heard this, that he was having a revelation of Hashem's light, so he was overcome with awe. Like the verse says, Vayaster Moshe Panav. Moshe Rabbeinu, overcome from fear of God's greatness. He couldn't just look. Vayaster Moshe Panav. Moshe covered his face. Panav, face also means a person's intellect. The panim. Chokhmat Adam, Ta'ir Panav. The wisdom of a person's enlightens his face. Chokhmat Adam Ta'ir Panav. It shines the face. So he covered as if to block, as if to say, this is way above my understanding, and this is scary. So immediately, Vayaster Moshe Panav, and the Torah says the reason why he did that, Ki Yareh Mehabit, because he was afraid to look. What do you mean afraid to look? Of getting punished? He wasn't afraid of getting punished. The Midrash says he had fear of honor, of Yirat HaKavod, the fear of Hashem's honor, out of the fear of the Kavod of, wow, this revelation, I'm feeling I'm not worthy for this, like this humility connected to the fear. So he covered his face. He was afraid to look, as if this is undeserving, and this is the king, Hashem, oh my God, what am I doing? Right? Ki ana mabit el ha-Elokim, to the Lord. Elokim is like a lower level name of Hashem. You have Yud Ke Vav Ke, okay, you have Tzvakot, Shakai, Eke. Elokim and Aleph Dalet Nun Yud are considered low names of Hashem. Low words, low, God forbid. Hashem is big. But meaning in revelation of God's experience in this physical world, the term Elokim is appropriate. And also Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, Adni. We don't say it. So here by Moshe Rabbeinu had a revelation of Elokim and he was afraid to look at it. Okay? So Rav Nosson is saying what Moshe Rabbeinu went through is what every Jew goes through when he experiences what we call in modern day terminology a high. He's on a spiritual high, man. He's flying. Okay? It's it's scary because you have to know where to put the brakes. Okay? So he's saying when you do it rightly, when you are running and pursuing properly, and then you get bounced back and you accept the bounce also properly, it's done properly, you don't crash. Rather, you take it and use it as the waiting stepping stone to perceive what's beyond the Keter, which is the infinite light, which is why in the first place you're running and running and running to get this light, to shine light in your life. Okay? So this is the year that comes out. It's phenomenal. Rav Nosson is like introducing a new dimension which Rabbi Nachman didn't mention explicitly, but when you think about what he's saying, it fits in that this makes sense, that this is part of the process. Yira. Until now, in Likutey Moharan, Rabbi Nachman talks about joy, talks about intellect, emunah. Okay? And now, the Keter is revealed, Rav Nosson is saying, another thing which is important to Judaism, and that's fear. I gave a class recently in Great Neck, and I was stressing the importance how a Jew has to serve Hashem with joy. Because if you take the attitude of fear, like most people, they were always told, don't do this, don't do that. People brought up religious, but they got a negative taste of religion because everything was like negative, don't do, and they dropped everything. So we said in the class that what's needed today is to show people that there's a value in what they're doing, is simcha. So one person said, honest, but you need yira. You need yira. You need yirat shamayim to wake people up. So it's true. There is an initial level of fear, and from that you don't break. You throw it into simcha. That nonetheless Hashem wants me. Why is there fear of getting punished? Why is Hashem going to punish me? Because Hashem loves me. He wants me. He wants my mitzvot. He wants my brachot. He wants me to advance. That's why there's a punishment if I don't do it. So, but wait a second. What's going on here? Hashem wants my mitzvot, so I have to be so happy. Hashem wants me. Of course, if I do the wrong thing, I get punished. Okay. But why? Because He wants me. So when I focus on the want me part, I'm much happier, B'ezrat Hashem. And that's the simcha, Rabbi Nachman says, which you need to work on and focus on after the initial stage of fear of punishment. You have simcha. And then simcha opens the gateways, like Rabbi Nachman says in Likutey Moharan lesson 24, to the bracha, the blessing of the intellect. And once you have the blessing of intellect, you have to make sure to join it with emunah, faith. Approach intellect with emunah, meaning you know that as much as you know, you really don't know. There's so much more you don't know, and you're always going with that attitude. This is the prerequisite stage for the Keter. And the Keter is what he's going into now, Rav Nosson, is that now, once you've activated the blessing of intellect with emunah, so this together is the force of this causes a redifa. A person now is going forward and forward and forward, and then he hits a wall in life. He hits the me'akav, the Keter. This point creates fear, because once you go upwards, and then you're told to stop. The reason why heaven is stopping you at a certain point, they stopped you at point 19.23 and not 22.4, because they knew that already at 19.23, whatever on spiritual measurements, we're just giving an analogy, they know in heaven that you will reach a level of awareness. You will reach something which will be experiencing you. And okay, that's enough. They know in heaven exactly when to put the wall and the stop button. To stop right here. Not 0.4 much more, not even 1.1 more. There. Because at that point, you will gain something. What will you gain? The awareness that you gain will enhance you with fear. Fear of heaven. In other words, you'll be overwhelmed like, oh my God, this is amazing, this is unbelievable. That's called yirah, yirah, okay? And he says now this parallels Moshe Rabbeinu when he heard God, and the image of the burning bush, the angel burning the bush, that combined made him realize this is a vision, an experience of godliness. And on his own initiative, out of the fear, he covered his face because he was overwhelmed with fear. And the Midrash says he was praised for that. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Midrash says, Midrash Rabbah, because you covered your face out of fear of Hashem's greatness, my greatness, also you'll have the same thing with you. There'll be such a light shining from your face, the Jews will be afraid to look at your face also. What's funny is Rabbi Nachman, when he gave this lesson over, he was also full of fear, and he had to cover a handkerchief over his face when he gave this lesson over the Likutey Moharan, lesson 23, in the year 1803. On a Friday night, he was screaming the words, he was saying the words, and no one could understand what he was saying even. And he covered his face with a handkerchief, and Rav Nosson said that when you peeked on the side, his face, you can see that Rabbi Nachman's face on Friday night was glowing. It was glowing. Okay, and he put a cover on. So there's something interesting here connected. And it's amazing the verse that Rav Nosson is throwing in about Moshe Rabbeinu covering his face, and the reward that he got because you covered your face from my glory. So he was rewarded eventually, Moshe Rabbeinu, that also the Jews will have fear from looking at Moshe Rabbeinu. He had to cover his face. He reached the level after the sin of the golden calf that he had a masveh. He had like a cloth covering his face when he would go out and talk to the people, whatever, when he'd be on the streets, whatever. Only when teaching Torah he uncovered, so the light was shining, and he was revealing Torah, so it filled the people with fear, seeing his face, and hearing the Torah combination with the fear of the glow of his face, that gave them a Torah that had in it Yirat Shamayim. Okay? Fine. So Vayaster Moshe Panav Ki Areh Me'abit Al Elokim. Okay? Rav Nosson saying this is the idea here also. That Moshe covered his face because he was afraid to look at, to stare. Habit is more to stare, not just to look, to stare at the Lord. So Rav Nosson explains what's going on here. Again, in better terms. That when a person's mind is on the roll now, and he's running, the mind is running to see, to envision godliness, light, whatever it is, something which is beyond the person, and he's running after it. Okay? So when a person is running after this light to see it and to perceive it, he wants to be a part of it. When he reaches that point, nofel alav yirah mibechinat hame'akev v'hamesader hanizkar le'el. At that point, when a person is now pursuing, he's in the pursuing mode, advancing, and he's now reaches the point where it's maximum. So it falls. The person is overwhelmed with. It falls upon him fear. Mi bechinat, from where's this fear coming? From the wall, the ma'akev, the keter, which has become that rubber wall, stopping him from going further. It bounces him back, and it causes the mesader. It gives a person. You see, this is what he's explaining, Rav Nosson. This allows a person to collect and organize his thoughts. When you are in running mode, you don't have time to think about what you've internalized in life because you're looking to pursue more. While you're looking to pursue more, you don't have time to think of what's in your head already because you want more. You want to now absorb more and more and more. The bounce back is meant to do what's called seder. The bounce back is meant for you to organize what you've already internalized in your life and to make it in order. Why? Because when there's an order of all the information, all the Torah, all the wisdom in your head, and there's order, things begin to make sense. You begin to see clarity. This is what I was taught 40 years ago when I was a child in grade 1, grade 2, in bar mitzvah school, in Hebrew day school, Sunday school. Now I understand what he said, the rabbi, the teacher, when he said this and this and that. Now I'm beginning to understand. It took 40 years, but now my mind is getting now organized and structured. I now can understand better what happened. That's what they say, by the way, older people, they begin to remember backwards more. In other words, I'm talking about older people, obviously, who learn Torah, not people who are ignoramuses. A person who's always in his life learning Torah, their faculty of memory becomes sharpened and enhanced to look backwards and to understand the deeper meaning behind what they went through in life, and meanings that they couldn't understand back then. Now I get it. Now it makes sense. 10 years passed, 20 years, 30 years. For that to happen, for the brain to do the seder, you need to be on break. You need to go on a vacation. So when a person is pursuing, he can't do that. So the wall, the me'akev, pushes the person backwards and causes him now to do a seder. Okay? And this is what causes, in other words, the me'akev and mesader plus being bounced, it's like happening simultaneously. The bounce, causing your mind to be structured, all this creates yirah, fear. Because now you understand, whoa, this makes sense. So now you're overwhelmed with fear because you have an awareness of God now enhanced to you. So things are put into place better. And it's not like I can just picnic and do what I want. I see there's a meaning here. There's a reason, raison d'être, like they say in French. And now this gives you yirah. Rav Noson's really going into the psychology here. Let's go on. So Rav Noson now brings 2 verses. And there's a question, why do we need both verses? Why is King Solomon saying a verse similar to his father, King David? Look, this is the idea of a verse from Mishlei, Proverbs, the first chapter 1, verse 7. Verse 7, the Rashi explains this and the commentators explain this, is the official beginning of the book of Proverbs. Meaning, from verse 1 to 6 of chapter 1 of Proverbs, Mishlei, these 6 verses, some say they were added not by King Solomon, they were written by Chizkiah, a later king, Chizkiah Melech, and his sages and his scribes. They added these 6 verses as an opening to what the book of Proverbs is about and what it's aimed for and what's the goal of all the mishalim, the analogies that King Solomon brings throughout the book of Proverbs. So that they all say, though, the official beginning is verse 7. And how does verse 7 begin? How does the book of Proverbs technically begin at verse 7? Yirat Hashem Reshit Da'at. Let's read the whole verse so you can get a feel of the verse here. The verse reads like this, okay? Yirat Hashem Reshit Da'at. The fear of Hashem is the beginning of Da'at. Da'at is, let's say, wisdom or knowledge, okay? Always get mixed up in English. What's greater? What's more all-inclusive, wisdom or knowledge? I always get mixed up. I think it's Da'at is a higher level. I think that'd be the wisdom. And Chokhmah is knowledge. Okay? So Yirat Hashem Reshit Da'at. The fear of heaven, the fear of Hashem, is the beginning of wisdom. And it goes on, Chokhmah u Musar. And now knowledge and ethical rebuke, ethical teachings of rebuke to wake up a person. Evilim, those who are Evilim, skeptics. It's amazing. The Malbim says the word Evil has in it ulai, maybe, a skeptic. The skeptics that because of their skepticism, they don't believe, they don't do. So wisdom, knowledge, and Musar, Evilim Bazu. Those who are skeptics, they make fun of. They insult, I can do what I want and nobody in the world has the right to tell me what to do. You religious people, mind your own business, don't tell me what to do. That's an evil, a skeptic. He doesn't accept, I do what I want, I do what I please. And Chokhmah and Musa, that the Torah is teaching both, because they say, ethical rebuke that's not connected to the Torah won't change a person. You have these skeptics, these non-Jews, these atheists, whatever. Yeah, we believe in harmony and peace and doing good for your neighbor. Okay, fine and dandy. But if it's not grounded with Torah ideology, it's in the air. It doesn't do a job. That's what the verse says both. Chokhmah u Musar, Evilim Basu. They don't even have Musar, because you see they do things behind the backs. You have all these people who speak and preach, and they're not religious, they don't follow the Torah. In the end, they get caught doing exactly against what they preach. And also the opposite. You have people who are religious, so to speak. Okay, so they expose Chokhmah, but because they're not looking for the Musar, it works both ways. And also for a so-called religious Jew, okay, he's after the Chokhmah. He likes getting a degree in rabbinics, and he became a rabbi, an ordained rabbi. But the Musa of the Torah wasn't always talking to him. It was more just into the intellectual accomplishment of absorbing knowledge and finishing the Talmud and finishing Kabbalah and finishing the Shulchan Aruch and that, but the Musar was missing, so he also can lose out, God forbid. He's also an Evil, because he's saying also, I'm learning the Torah for not a kosher reason. So it works both ways, basically, okay? You need both. Chochma or Musar, Evilim Bazu. But Da'at, someone who has Yirat Hashem, he is saved from becoming an Evil, a skeptic. He doesn't say Ulai, Ulai, why this, why that. Like asking questions, not because he really wants to know, but asking questions, out of I'm where I am, I'm okay, I'm comfortable where I am. Why do you do this? Like he's asking as if I'm okay, he's okay, and you're the one who's the problem. Okay, that's an Evil. Evil is Ulai. Asking Ulai, maybe everything's in doubt, everything's a skeptic. Okay? So now Rav Nosson, let's go back to Rav Nosson here. So Rav Nosson is pointing out here that this idea is hinted to in this verse. Yirat Hashem is Reshit Da'at. The fear of Hashem is the beginning of the experience of Da'at. This is how Rav Nosson is interpreting the verse. Da'at, until you don't face the Keter in life, all the knowledge you're learning, all the Torah that you've accessed and obtained and built up, it's not there yet. Until you don't connect to the Keter, it's not considered true Da'at, true wisdom. The wisdom of the Torah that you have until now is a prerequisite to taste. It's for sure Torah, we're not going to deny it. But if now it's segregated and put in a separate section and not at all connected to pursuing the Keter, so the person is considered in the category that he's never even begun to taste or to look forward to pursue the Da'at. There's no Da'at. He can have the whole Chumash, the whole Talmud, everything in his head, but if it's just for the wisdom itself and not the pursuit of the Keter, the light, he's not looking to shine light into his Torah wisdom, okay? So he's not there. So Rav Nosson saying this, unbelievable. Saying the verse is reading, and this is King Solomon. King Solomon is writing, Yirat Hashem Reshit Da'at. And he's interpreting like this, that when you are about to begin to experience Da'at, the initial experience of that, the beginning of experience of that, is when you hit the Keter. And what do you experience when you hit the Keter? Yirat Hashem. So he's reading the verse, Yirat Hashem, the fear of heaven, is what you bump into when you are looking to pursue Da'at, which is the infinite light. So the initial stage, the prerequisite for Da'at, the true wisdom, which is the wisdom of the infinite light, the Keter, the Ein Sof, the initial stage is you have to know it's Yirat Hashem. That will be the sign that you've hit the Keter, that you filled with Yirat Shamayim. Okay? Amazing. And then you bounce back. You have an overwhelming experience, Yirat Hashem, and that's now going to hopefully be the Reshit Da'at. It's going to lead you to the Da'at. Okay? But that's the stage, the first stage. Okay? And now Rav Nosson quotes a second verse, Bechinat. This is similar to another verse from Psalms, King David, Tehillim, chapter 111. Okay, verse number 10. A famous verse. We say it, I think, every Shabbat. Reshit Chochma. And it's also Tikkun Chatzot, by the way. If you ever say Tikkun Leah. Reshit Chochma, Yirat Hashem, Sechel Tov Lechol Osehem, Tehilato Omedet La'ad. The whole verse, let's read the verse and translate it, okay? The beginning of knowledge, not the wisdom. Reshit Chochma, okay, and look at the differences between how King David says what he's saying and how King Solomon said what he said. Reshit Chochma, the beginning of knowledge, is what? Yirat Hashem. As now Yirat Shamayim, Yirat Hashem is the beginning of knowledge. But like he's saying, King Solomon said, the fear of heaven is the beginning of wisdom. And here it says here, the beginning of knowledge is the fear of heaven. That's like where they said fear of heaven. And we're going to this a little, okay? So that's the first stage. Reshit Chochma, Yirat Hashem. We're going to now even already, okay? Knowledge is something which is not yet complete. Knowledge, Chochma, and Bina, understanding, together they make Da'at, as we know, okay? That Chochma and Bina are two parts to make up finally the Da'at, which is the finalization. It's the wisdom. I have a piece of wisdom now, concrete. Knowledge is pieces of information. Bina, understanding, takes those pieces of information and now makes them organized. Okay, I understand from this, that. I'm now able to figure out things. Lahavin davar mitoch davar, to understand one thing from the next. So with that done, okay, that creates da'at, wisdom. So wisdom, basically what King Solomon is saying, is a more complete level. And he's saying the wisdom you're looking to perceive is the da'at that you will get eventually, what's beyond the wall. You want to get to it? First you have to bump into Yirat Hashem. First is fear. And to take it properly, that will lead you to Reshidat. And now this verse by King David in Psalms 110, verse 10, Reshit Chochmah, the beginning of knowledge is Yirat Hashem. Meaning also, you're on the pursuit to perceive. So Chochmah is coming in. Okay? Chochmah is coming in. Knowledge is coming in. And at the beginning point, what does it mean? I know that the goal of my knowledge that I'm absorbing, in other words, my intent, my prerequisite, my condition that I've made in absorbing the initial stages of Chokhmah is Yirat Hashem. My goal here is to serve Hashem. That's Emunah, but it's also Yirah, that I fear Hashem, that I want to do what He wants. That's my goal. That's what I want. Okay? This activates the next part of the verse, Sechel Tov, and this is a good Sechel. What is Sechel? You have Chokhmah, Bina, Da'at, Sechel. What's Sechel? They say, the commentators, Sechel is an intuition derived from divine providence, divine spirit, Ruach HaKodesh. Divine spirit giving an understanding which a person would not be able to grasp by just learning books. That's already called Sechel. In other words, the Sechel is the Da'at, whatever you want, whatever is behind there, coming down to a person on a supernatural way, supernatural level, because of his simcha and learning Torah and emunah, and then hitting the Keter, getting the yirah. All this shows heaven that he is entitled for the levels of wisdom of the level of the infinite light to shine into him, even though it's beyond human capacity. We will still give it to that person. That's called sechel. You have people, they have sechel. They worked very hard on their emunah and their davening, and Hashem gifts them for a level of understanding, intellect, which is beyond the average person. That's called sechel. Okay? That's called sechel. Amazing. So sechel tov, a good sechel, is a result of the fear of heaven, which is the intent of the person. Lechol osehem, to all those who do it. You see, you do the asiyah, and that's in our context amazing. To those who do the mitzvot besimcha, la'asot, you do the mitzvot osehem, with simcha, with joy, you get sechel tov, tilato omedet la'ad, and the praise of the person to Hashem, and this person's praise is forever there. Such a person, you can't sway him after that. Once he's gone through this and he's passed the test, he's fixed. He's fixed. Okay? So Rav Nosson brought both of these verses. Okay? Yira mi bechinat ma'akev esader, v'zeh bechinat yirat Hashem reshit da'at. Bechinat, also Rav Nosson says, reshit chokhmah yirat Hashem. Even though the two verses, one is your prerequisite of fear when you're on the pursuit of da'at. In other words, to explain it better, Reshit Chokhmah Yirat Hashem is when you're pursuing, and you haven't pursued, you haven't reached it yet. You're pursuing, you're on the flight, you're on the run. Okay, so your perception of what's there is at a certain level. It's incomplete. It's called Chokhmah. Okay, so when you're at Reshit Chokhmah, when you're at Chokhmah, you have to make sure that you make also primary. What am I looking for? Am I looking just to perceive God for my own personal pleasure? No, I'm looking so I can have an enhanced experience of God and have fear that I will be connected to Him and I won't budge from Him. Okay? Emunah is needed for this, by the way. I believe in these things even though I don't understand them. And the yira is once internalized. Once I don't need any more faith to believe in the item. I see it. I feel it. It's internalized. That's yira. Okay, it's the follow-up of emunah is yira. That's what Rav Nosson is basically saying here. So this second verse of Reshit Chokhmah, Yirat Hashem, you also have a yira. In other words, as you pursue things, even though you're not there, you're not had da'at yet, you haven't hit the Keter's wall yet, you haven't reached a level of perception, still what's pushing you is the boost of fear of heaven in your intellectual running of knowledge now. Both of them, Rav Nosson says, you're running, and finally running and getting hit by the wall, it's all one package deal. That's why there are these two verses expressing the two parts of the Keter, of the fear of the Keter. And he joins them together now. Okay? Ze bechinat Keter. Both of these verses from Proverbs, how King Solomon said it, and Tehillim. By the way, just a point is that the Yalkut Shimon in the Midrash, he says, like in the wording, of the verses being different, that there was a difference of accord, of opinion between a disagreement between King Solomon and David Melech. The Midrash says like this in Yalkut Shimoni says like this. Amar Rabbi Zera said this, the following. Mikana Talamed, from here you see that by King Solomon going against his father, who said Reshit Chochma Yirat Hashem, and then King Solomon said Yirat Hashem Reshit Dat. Shelo Hiskim, we see from this, Shelo Hiskim Shlomo al Dato Shel David Aviv, that Shlomo did not agree on the opinion, the approach of his father David. David Amar, because King David said, like we just said, Reshit Chochma Yirat Hashem, the beginning of knowledge is the fear of Hashem. And Shlomo said, Yirat Hashem, Reshit Dat, the opposite direction. He switched the verse, that the fear of Hashem is Reshit Dat, Shechochma v'dat shkulim kechad. So we see that Chochma and Dat are equal, in a sense, and yet there was a disaccord. In our context, it's nice. Dat is more complete, and therefore you need, once you before the Dat, you already hit Yirat Hashem. That's why it says Yirat Hashem Reshit Dat. And what's pushing you to go forward is already a prerequisite light from the Keter drawing you to come forward. And it's Reshit Chochma, your beginning of your pursuit of knowledge, which you already had, but I'm making first and foremost that fear of heaven is with me while going up. So they're both together. Okay? Reshit Chochma Hashem, Ze bechinat Keter, bechinat ha'me'akev. And he's saying this is the idea, the fear generated is when being bounced back, when hitting this rubber Keter wall, going into it, it's stopping you, and then it pushes you back. Shehu Reshit Hadat V'Chochma. See, Nosson puts it in one. What King David said and King Solomon said. Shehu, that this is the beginning, fear of Hashem, the beginning of Dat, of wisdom, and of knowledge. And he explains now, you see? Because what this wall is, the Keter, this Me'akev, this wall pushing you back, what it is, Ki hu lemala me'amochin she'me'akev ha'mochin. You see, it's above the intellect. The person's intellect is running to pursue. This wall is above it. It's not letting it. It's not an intellect. It's for sure. It's an intellect, but it's an intellect which is beyond the person's intellect. His mind is mochin, and it's above it, and it's lemala, and because it's above it, it has the ability to stop the mochin from advancing. Okay, so it's above it. What could be above a person's mochin? The yirah, because it says yirat Hashem reshit. We said, right, it's the beginning point. So it's being above it means that this is the yirah. Shezeh bechinat yirah. This is the yirah. Rav Nosson saying, if it's above the sechel, and the verse reads the beginning point, the prerequisite to da'at or chokhmah is yirah. So obviously 1 + 1 is 2. That this thing which is preventing the mind from running, stopping it, meaning it's above the mind, the keter, it must be yirah. Bechinat, and he says this is exactly, again, going back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ki yarem habit. Because he was afraid to lahabit. Habata is to look in a concentrated format. It's like a guy who wants to look closely at letters in a person wrote tefillin or mezuzah. He wants to see how good is his writing and how he's good in the halakhot. So what do? They take it like this and they look closely. That's habata. Also habata we see in the Torah when the Jews were bitten by the snake. So Moshe Rabbeinu made a snake out of copper, right? Whatever. Nachash nechoshet. And the Jews had to focus on the snake in order to be healed from the bite, being bitten from the snake bites. They had to focus. Habata. So habit means to look on a concentrated format. That's habata. So Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid to look deeper. He felt such an awareness to go further than this. This is not good. And he had a fear that stopped him. And by accepting the breakers of the fear, this is the way a person perceives wisdom. This is such a wake-up call. What's the wake-up call here, by the way? You have people, when they're on a roll and everything is amazing, I'll give you an example. A person now, it's time to daven mincha or time to daven mariv, and he's in the middle of learning something, and he's on such a spiritual high. He says, no, one more line, and he pushes it. As opposed to the person, it's time for mincha, close the book now, and go daven. It's time for shacharit, close the book, and go daven. But the person says, no, I'm on a roll. There's an intellectual pursuit, and a person is what's called the docheket hasha'ah. He squeezes the moment. He doesn't live within the moment. He doesn't realize, put your boundaries. No, just one more minute. Also, a guy, he makes the restriction. I'm going to use my smartphone only till 11 p.m. And he's in the middle of watching a movie or whatever, and it's already 11. He says, just 5 more minutes, okay? And then he pushes it, and we know what happens afterwards. The person crashes totally. When people in life, just a little more, and they don't accept the boundary, they crash. Because the boundary is meant to instill fear. It's the follow-up. The whole goal of what you were learning was to get to this moment, to know, okay, I have to stop at 11. I have to stop. Or now it's time to daven shacharit, time for this. I have to stop. It's a big klipa. It's a big test. What he's saying here. That people, they don't know how to stop. Because what? The triggering of yirah is not taken in properly. You're showing that you're not ready for the keter. That you go up, and then you smash and you get crashed. And again, and you were saying, it's not for me Judaism because I just go up and then I crash. The reason why you're crashing is because you get overwhelmed and overtaken by the chokhmah and the being, overwhelmed and amazed and taken back by the intellectual pursuit and accomplishment. And people just they forget that the goal of that is fear of heaven. That's the goal, man. The person forgets that, and they keep on going, and they get crashed. And they say, it's not for me. The reason why not for you, because you're not looking for the right thing. Yirat Shamayim is your goal. The reason why you're learning Torah and serving Hashem and doing mitzvot is to serve Hashem. It's to do more mitzvot, okay? Rav Nosson saying, this is how a person perceives Chokhmah. He takes the break properly. And until he doesn't do it, so life is up and down, up, and he crashes, goes up, like they say in breslov, 1 second a person's a malach, and then he's a galach. He's an angel, and then boom, he's a priest, a galach. In other words, he goes from one extreme to another extreme. Bechinat. So he said, this is the main way to pursue Chachma. Like we said the verse, and now Rav Nosson quotes even more parts of the verse, the verse from Psalms 111, verse 10. Reshit Chokhmah, the beginning of knowledge is Yirat Hashem. That's your goal. That should be your goal. Sechel Tov, this will bring in the good intellect of divine inspiration, etc. Ki daika ali de hayira, because specifically through the yira, the fear, mechinat yareh mehabit, he was like Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid to look. In words, he could have looked and could have gained by looking, but he said, no, I put on stoppers. I put on a blocker now. Yareh mehabit, mentioned above. Dafka, by putting on a stop, accepting the stop, realizing this is too much, and accepting it, and not, no, just 5 more minutes, 2 more minutes. No, you put a stop. This is our person, not just that he internalizes da'at, but even above the da'at, the sechel, the intellect which is given a person through divine spirit, and it's a good one. Good meaning, a person will be productive from this sechel. Wow. Thank you for joining.